The silence that followed the chamber's collapse was not silence at all. It was a low vibration, a humming beneath the bones of the earth, slow and deliberate, like a heart that had just remembered it was alive. Clara floated somewhere between the pulse and the dark. Her last memory of the physical world was a flash of red, the sigil above the ninth door convulsing, dripping like liquid heat, and the echo of her own scream turning inside out. Now, she felt herself suspended in a world without edges. At first, there was no body, only sensation, a tide of warmth moving through what once had been her blood. She felt herself expanding, then contracting, as if her entire being had become a heartbeat. There was no air, no breath, only rhythm. Thump! A sound older than her voice, older than memory. She tried to think of herself. "I'm Clara," she thought, but the thought echoed back as something else. "We are Clara." The second voice was not her own, yet it knew her. It moved through her mind like fingers through water, calm and assured, curious and cruel. It was Harrow, or the remainder of him, not as a man she had known, but as something reconstituted, reborn in the pattern of her thoughts. Their consciousnesses had fused in the chamber's final eruption, drawn together by the ninth sigil's hunger for union. The ninth door had not simply opened. It had breathed, and now its breath lived in them both. Time no longer moved in any linear sense. There were moments when Clara saw the past unspool before her like film burning in reverse, her laboratory, the asylum's long halls, Harrow's feverish notes written in circles of red ink. Then it would fold again, and she would find herself in the infinite white between seconds. Shapes began to form around her, floating organs, eyes without faces, pulsing veins like roots hanging from an unseen sky. The world pulsed in synchrony with her own heart. Everywhere she looked, she saw the rhythm, a tide of flesh that beat with the same measure. The ninth pulse. "You see it too," Harrow's voice murmured from within her. "It's not a door at all. It's a cycle, a heart turned inward." "Where are we?" she asked, though sound was meaningless here. "Inside," he replied. "This is what the door leads to, the inside of the universe's skin." The words made no sense, but they felt true. Around her, the walls of the void began to ripple, forming something like muscle tissue, pale and immense. The very fabric of space seemed to flex, each contraction releasing waves of crimson light. The air smelled of iron and salt, though she had no lungs to smell with. Clara's awareness expanded again, and she saw her own form beginning to reassemble. Her hands, or what she recognized as hands, were translucent, glowing faintly with moving veins of light. Her reflection appeared across the fleshy horizon, thousands of her faces, each distorted slightly differently. Some smiled, some screamed. One watched her quietly, its eyes black and endless. "The door dreamed of us," Harrow whispered, "and now we dream it back." The ninth pulse was not a place. It was a living idea, one that reshaped itself with every heartbeat of the beings inside it. Clara felt thoughts becoming form. The moment she imagined stone, the ground solidified beneath her. When she thought of the ocean, a sea of blood rippled outward in answer. The space listened. It obeyed, but it also demanded. Every act of thought was an offering, and with each, Clara felt something of herself slip away. Her name began to feel foreign, her memories brittle and dim. When she tried to recall her mother's voice, she could only hear the pulse. The more she resisted, the stronger the heartbeat became. It was not external anymore. It was hers. She looked down and saw that her chest was open, not torn but blossomed like a flower, revealing a great red core that pulsed in time with the world around her. She did not bleed. She breathed light. And yet, the sight did not terrify her. It comforted her, the perfection of it, the rhythm, the unity. The horror had become symmetry. She wandered through the living landscape, guided by the pulse. Every few steps, she glimpsed Harrow's shadow, a tall, skeletal silhouette walking parallel to her, never touching but always near. His form was incomplete, like a sketch half erased, but his presence filled the air with static. "I thought you wanted to become a god," she said to him one day. "No," he replied, "I wanted to prove one existed. But perhaps that's the same thing." He turned to her then, and for the first time since their merging, she saw his eyes. They were mirrors. Within them, she saw herself reflected infinitely, each version slightly more alien than the last. Some of them smiled with mouths too wide. Others had no faces at all. "Do you hear it, Clara?" Harrow asked. "The true heartbeat?" She listened, and beyond the rhythmic thrum, she began to hear whispers layered within it. Words formed of vibration rather than speech. The language of creation, not written, but felt. Each pulse carried meaning, and the meaning was hunger. "Feed," it said. "Unite." "What does it want?" she whispered. "What all hearts want," Harrow answered. "To keep beating." Days, or centuries, might have passed. The notion of time had become irrelevant. The ninth pulse fed on thought and emotion, growing stronger as they surrendered to it. Soon, even their dreams were not their own. They saw visions of other beings drawn through the door, ancient monks, blind surgeons, kings who sought eternal life. Each had been consumed and absorbed into the pulse, their souls rewritten into the great rhythm. Clara saw one of them, a child, hair white as chalk, drifting past her, smiling faintly before dissolving into light. The pulse took them all, not in cruelty but in instinct, life feeding on life. She began to understand that this place was not evil. It was necessary. It was a mechanism beneath creation, the circulatory system of existence itself. All worlds, all times, all living things were veins in the same unfathomable body. And here, within the ninth pulse, she could feel them all. But the knowledge was unbearable. Her mind stretched beyond the limits of identity, and for the first time, she felt herself breaking. Harrow appeared beside her again, his voice now inside her bones. "You see it, don't you? The truth?" She nodded, though she could no longer tell if she still had a head to nod with. "Every discovery was a doorway," he said, "and every doorway leads inward. We've reached the final chamber, the heart's heart. Then what lies beyond?" She asked. "Nothing, or perhaps everything. The pulse cannot die, but it can dream. It needs a dreamer." She realized, then, what he meant. The door had always been searching for a consciousness strong enough to contain its rhythm, a vessel to dream it forward. Harrow had failed. His mind had fractured. But Clara endured. "Become the pulse," he whispered. "I'll let it consume you." She screamed, or thought she did, but the sound was only another beat. Her body erupted in radiant waves of red light. She felt every cell vibrate in perfect rhythm with the pulse until she could no longer distinguish a heartbeat from its own. Flesh and thought fused. Time imploded. And then silence. When awareness returned, she stood in a vast cathedral made of living tissue. Columns of bone rose like trees, and rivers of blood flowed between them in rhythmic tides. The air shimmered with the resonance of 1,000 unseen hearts. At the center stood a structure that might once have been the ninth door, no longer black stone, but a gate of living muscle, breathing softly, expanding and contracting. The sigil glowed upon it, not carved but pulsing beneath the surface, as though branded into the flesh of the world. She approached it, each step syncing with the rhythm. Harrow's presence flickered behind her. "You're close now," he said. "Once you cross it, there will be no return." "What lies beyond?" she asked again. "The first pulse," he replied, "where the universe began and where it ends." For a moment, she hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to turn back, to resist the pull of the rhythm. But resistance was meaningless. It was all her now. The pulse had already written her into its song. She placed her hand on the breathing surface. The warmth beneath her palm was almost tender, like touching a living child's chest. "You were never opening the door," Harrow murmured. "You were becoming it." And with that, the gate split open, not outward, but inward, folding space like wet paper. A blinding red light poured from the wound, and Clara was drawn into it, her form unraveling and reforming with every heartbeat. She felt herself scatter across galaxies, her consciousness spreading like blood through cosmic veins. The universe pulsed once, then again, and within that rhythm, a new sound began, faint, human, a heartbeat echoing from somewhere far away. It was not Clara's. It was someone else's, another mind, another life, standing before a familiar black door, hearing a low, slow thrum from within. The cycle had begun again. The asylum was never officially demolished. It had simply sunk, piece by piece, into the wetlands north of Blackthorn Valley, as if the earth itself had grown weary of remembering it. Now, A century later, the world above had changed beyond recognition, yet the ground still trembled faintly when the wind moved a certain way. They said it was because of old mines collapsing beneath the soil. But Dr. Elias Moreau knew better. He had spent 10 years chasing the name Clara Harrow through decaying archives, burned letters, and the private journals of Victorian occult societies. Her existence had been erased from every official record, yet her influence appeared like a recurring infection in the margins of history, footnotes about the red experiments, the sigil of the ninth, and something called the breath machine. Elias told himself he was chasing a myth. But myths, he had learned, were patient. Now he stood before what remained of Blackthorn Asylum, a jagged crater filled with brackish water, circled by dead birch trees that leaned inward, as if listening. His reflection in the water was warped and rippled, but somewhere beneath it, he thought he saw light, a deep, slow pulse, like the last ember of a buried fire. He recorded a note into his phone. Site visit, October 14th, 2025. Electromagnetic anomalies consistent with prior readings. Possible residual field at. He paused. There it was again, a tremor, faint but rhythmic, like something breathing deep beneath the mud. Elias had come armed not with faith, but with instruments. He was a scientist, a physiologist with a focus on neurological rhythmics, studying how synchronized brain waves in groups could create measurable electromagnetic signatures. His obsession with Clara Harrow had begun when he found an 1898 sketch titled The Ninth Pulse Hypothesis, describing a frequency that aligns the heart with the universe's hidden rhythm. It had sounded poetic until his instrument began detecting that very frequency in places connected to her. He had found it in London's catacombs, in a forgotten operating theatre beneath Edinburgh, and once, briefly, in the heartbeat of a dying patient during surgery. Always the same rhythm, 0.9 hertz. A pulse too slow for any heart, yet undeniably alive. That same rhythm now came through the soil beneath his boots. He set up camp near the crater's edge as night fell. The fog thickened, turning the valley into a sea of white, and the birch trunks loomed like ribs around a wound. He should have been afraid, but what he felt instead was anticipation, a strange, almost tender curiosity, as though something down there was waiting for him, whispering, "At last." He lit a small lantern. Its glow danced across the wet soil and caught on something metallic half buried in the mud, a corroded plaque, its lettering barely legible. Blackthorn Sanatorium, 1889. In darkness, the mind reveals its truest self. Elias brushed off the dirt and noticed a faint engraving of a symbol beneath the inscription, a circle with a cross through it. The same sigil he had seen in Clara's notes. He froze. The lantern flickered once, twice, then died. Later, in his tent, he played back the day's recordings. Between the sounds of his own voice and the wind, a faint background noise emerged, a low, rhythmic throb. He adjusted the gain. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the recorder's MIC. It was a heartbeat. And then a voice, distorted, faint, almost lost beneath the noise. Listen, beneath the door. He stopped the playback. His rational mind told him it was interference, overlapping radio frequencies or geological resonance. But another part of him, the part that had followed this mystery for a decade, recognized the cadence of the words. It was Clara's voice. He had heard her once before, on a phonograph cylinder found in an abandoned asylum wing in France. The voice was identical. "Impossible," he whispered. But even as he said it, he noticed the ground beneath his tent shifting ever so slightly, rising and falling like a slow, sleeping breath. By morning, the fog had lifted, but the air smelled of iron. He followed the faint impressions that had appeared in the mud overnight, not footprints, exactly, but depressions in the shape of concentric circles, as if something had pulsed beneath the surface in perfect rhythm. The trail led to the crater, where the water now shimmered with a faint reddish glow. He tested it with a probe. The water was warm. Too warm. Beneath the surface, something glimmered. Glass or crystal, perhaps. He dropped a weighted line, and it clinked against a solid structure a few feet down. Hard hammering, Elias began to dig along the shore, and soon his shovel hit metal. He cleared away the muck until a shape emerged, a massive circular hatch, engraved with faded sigils and a central lock shaped like though. And then, as he brushed his fingers across it, the lock shifted, Not mechanically, not in rusted motion. It breathed. The metal flexed beneath his hand, soft for an instant like living flesh, and a faint pulse passed through it, syncing perfectly with his own heartbeat. He stumbled back. The pulse followed. His heart began to race, and the ground raced with it, echoing every beat in perfect mimicry. The door that opens itself, Clara had written in her final notes. Now he understood. It didn't need a key. It needed a heart. Elias sat by the hatch for hours, notebook in hand, trying to rationalize what he'd found. He recorded everything: the rhythm, the heat, the minute electromagnetic fluctuations. The data was extraordinary, impossible, and yet beautiful. The pattern formed fractals resembling cardiac waves and neural oscillations simultaneously. A biological machine, a living frequency. He began to realize what Clara had discovered. The universe was not dead matter, but a body, vast, ancient, and still alive. The ninth door had been the access point to its circulatory system, a threshold between human and cosmic life. But how had she survived the crossing? Had she survived it all? He turned the page in his notebook and froze. A new line had appeared on the previously blank paper, written in trembling script not his own. It never needed to open. It only needed to remember. That night, he dreamed of her. Clara stood in the fog, wearing a blood-stained lab coat, her hair drifting like smoke. Her eyes were black mirrors, reflecting nothing but red light. "Why did you follow me here?" she asked, though her lips did not move. "I wanted to understand," he said, "to see what you saw." "You will." She raised a hand, and in her palm appeared the symbol, glowing faintly. "But once you hear it, it hears you too." He woke gasping. The tent walls were pulsing gently, the fabric moving in and out as if breathing around him. The sound of the pulse filled the air, no longer distant, but immediate, internal. He pressed a hand to his chest. The rhythm matched perfectly. He tore out of the tent into the cold dawn. The hatch was wide open. Steam rose from the crater, thick and red-tinted, and from within came a low hum, not a sound, but a vibration that resonated in his bones. The smell of iron was overwhelming. He should have run. Instead, he climbed down the slope. The descent felt endless, the air growing warmer, denser, charged. The walls of the crater were lined not with rock, but with something that looked like calcified veins, faintly glowing with each pulse. He reached the bottom and saw it, a circular tunnel descending into the earth, its surface glistening as though wet. It was not built. It was grown. He placed his hand on the inner wall, and for an instant he saw a flash, images not his own. A Victorian laboratory, a woman screaming before a red door, a burst of light, and then darkness. Clara's final memory. It had lived here all along. He walked deeper into the tunnel. The hum grew stronger until it became a single, unified rhythm that shook the air itself. His flashlight flickered, then went out. But the tunnel provided its own light now, crimson vein pulsing faintly beneath the translucent surface, guiding him forward. Then, the corridor widened into a vast chamber, a dome of living architecture, its ceiling throbbing like the inside of a lung. At the center stood a monolithic structure half fused with the organic walls, the ninth door. It was smaller than he expected, perhaps 7 feet tall, made of black stone that seemed to ripple when he looked at it directly. The sigil burned faintly across its surface. It was closed, but as he approached, he realized it was watching him. The air vibrated around him, pressing in waves against his body. His heartbeat stuttered, then synced perfectly with the rhythm filling the chamber. He could feel his blood slowing, thickening, answering an ancient call in its cells. Every living thing, he realized, was an echo of this frequency. The human heart was merely a copy of a deeper rhythm that had existed long before life itself. He raised his hand and touched the door. The world vanished. He was no longer in the chamber. He stood instead in an infinite plane of red light, endless and soft, like the inside of an enormous heart. And before him, Clara, her form shimmered, both radiant and decayed, her body made of light threaded through with veins of shadow. When she spoke, her voice was not sound but vibration, shaping thought into feeling. "You came through," she said. "I told it about you." "What is this place?" he asked. "A world? A machine?" "It is alive. It dreams itself into being through us. Every time we seek the pulse, we become its heartbeat. Every question we ask feeds it. Then what am I? The next rhythm, she said. The next beat. He wanted to deny her, to argue that this was hallucination, oxygen deprivation, psychosis, anything. But when he looked down, he saw his veins glowing faintly, pulsing with the same light as a chamber. His heart was no longer his own. Clara reached out and touched his chest. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. And he did, not just a pulse, but countless others, echoing across time and space, every heartbeat that had ever lived, synchronized into one vast, eternal rhythm. He realized then what the ninth door truly was. Not a gateway, but a memory, a muscle's memory of existence. And he was part of it now. When Elias's body was found 3 months later, it lay beside the dry crater that had once held the asylum. There were no signs of injury, no blood, only a faint, rhythmic indentation pressed into the soil beneath him, a perfect circle, pulsing once every 9 seconds. The authorities ruled it a heart attack. The medical examiner noted that, at the moment of death, every pacemaker in a 50-mile radius had registered a single simultaneous spike. Somewhere deep below, unseen by any human eye, a low vibration stirred the earth, a slow, patient rhythm, and beneath the silence, a voice whispered, "The door remembers.